Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Administrator Babbitt, for being here. I appreciate it. As usual, I try to attend these when you're here because I obviously have some parochial issues, but some broader suites. But first, I want to do a couple, if I can, just a couple comments on Alaska issues, which obviously I view this hearing not only update on fatigue and others, but a general kind of update on your survival for 6 months so far. And the first one is, in Alaska, you know, our flight service stations in Alaska are not contracted out. We're the only one that's not contracted out. All the rest are contracted out services, and of course, we appreciate that. We think they do a great job. Our concern, and my concern, is that there are vacancies occurring. The training is not occurring to replace those people. And what I'm starting to hear is that folks are concerned that it's basically FAA is letting it kind of peter out so then they can have an excuse to contract out. And that concerns me. And I will only tell you from a personal experience, as someone who has to fly a lot in Alaska, most recently on a regional, small, very small, 8-seater, coming out of a small town back to Anchorage International, which very rarely, I cannot recall other than volcanic ash that closed it down for a period of time. We were circling multiple times because the fog was so thick, which I'd never seen since I was born and raised there. I'd never seen it this thick. And of course, you know, the stations were doing what they were doing, giving us the right information. And we were also getting a little concerned about fuel because it wasn't the intent to go further than where we were headed. We did end up cutting through the fog, and visually, based on the service center's recommendation of where to land in a different airport. The poor person that was with me from Washington, D.C. had never been in a small plane, had an experience of their lifetime. But those service centers are critical. And the people that run those, we greatly appreciate. I don't want to discount what goes on in the lower 48, but what we've done in Alaska, I think, has been a very good job. We have capacity to train these folks in Alaska, but the concern is that they are not filling the vacancies with the rumor mill ripe with this is how they're going to contract it out. So I want to make it very clear we are not interested in contracting out. I'd like to get from you at a point, not you don't have to do it now, but at a point where you can give me an update on what's happening there and what the vacancy levels are, what the plan for training is, and what the rollover rate is. Those are critical people for air conditions or conditions in Alaska. And my experience was about a month and a half ago, and it reassures me the quality of people we have working there. Okay. So if you could.
Yes, sir. You have a very high-quality team up there. That's a unique environment. Let me assure you that we're looking at this. We've recently had a new federal ruling that allows us to do two things. One, we can continue people who would otherwise be looking at retirement. If they'd like to stay, they may. We can even go back, and people who thought they wanted to retire and then realized later, gee whiz, I actually would rather be working again. This new federal rule allows us to go back to an annuitant, which was previously prohibited. We can now re-engage them. I don't have the full details, but I will get back with you and your office to make sure that we have the staffing levels that are required up there. And I have no intent of making any change in that environment, so that I think I can assuage that fear for you.
Great, thank you. The second one, which I want to thank your office for, we had to get waivers for oxygen to be moved by plane. As you know, your assistant deputy administrator helped a great deal on that. Literally, we were, in some cases, 2 days away from people losing their capacity to have oxygen to live, and we had to have waivers, and I appreciate your office. But the one thing they didn't grant, which is waivers, again, for oxygen tanks for construction. And the reason construction, because you're using them for welding and so forth. Sure. We're now transporting these 250-pound containers on snow machines across the tundra in the winter. I don't know if that's very safe, to be very frank with you, because they're not going on a smooth ride. So if you could look into that, I greatly appreciate it. They did the first half, which was fantastic. I mean, literally made a difference in people's lives overnight. And it's just a unique situation of transporting those facilities because we can't do it by road. It's just not possible.
No, I'm aware.
Let me follow up on a couple quick things. I only have a few seconds left. But when pilots are denied by their carrier not to fly because of fatigue, is there a record by the airlines when that happens? Do you know how many of those have ever occurred? In other words, where an airline says, you know what, you look a little too tired, or the pilot says, I'm too tired. is there such a record or documentation that you could say it's actually, they're doing it?
If those records are being maintained, Senator, they're being maintained by the carriers. I will tell you that I think a number of carriers have addressed this pretty progressively. They have what they call commuter letters, where a pilot, if the commute itself has led to some fatigue, they have a vehicle which they can take themselves off a flight. Now this is an industrial solution, so they're different on different carriers. But some of the carriers that I've seen, the language allow them to take themselves off a flight, and in return, they're willing to make up a flight on another day when they're rested. Others have different ways. Sometimes. But
do you? I don't mean to interrupt you, Administrator, but do you do random reviews to see? I mean, I don't want to be critical on the airline industry because I think generally it's an amazing, safe industry overall, but we have some issues. But what they tell you and what you see may be two different things. So do you have capacity, do you have authority and capacity to say, I want to see the last month of how many people pilots said, no, I can't fly because of fatigue, or you have turned away as pilots because of fatigue? Do you have one capacity, and have you done that?
We have not made that recommendation, to my knowledge, to go in or requested that type of inspection. I'm certain if we did, that the carriers would volunteer it. What you would be asking.
So you have capacity, you have legal capacity, you think, to do that?
I don't believe we do.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe we do.
But they will voluntarily.
But I would see no reason why, as long as we kept the information proprietary.
Sure.
That a carrier, if we said how many people called in sick last month, and how many of those sick, or how many people called in sick, and how many said they couldn't fly due to fatigue, not illness, but fatigue. I'm very comfortable the carriers would share that with us.
I've gone way past my time here. I just want to say your example of when you posted on the website, I remember as mayor I did that on a couple things when people weren't paying their bills, and I put them on the website, and it was amazing. The collection rate spiked rapidly. So yeah. I think that's a good idea. Take it one more step. I mean, I was glad to hear about it today, but if I wasn't at this hearing, I would have not known that.
Yeah. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator.